The hero, a young man from a distant human world, walked slowly toward the grand gates of the vampire palace. The sun had already set, and the sky was painted with dark purple and black clouds. The palace walls were enormous, carved from black stone that glimmered faintly under the moonlight. Torches flickered along the corridors, casting strange, moving shadows. Inside the palace, everything was quiet. The air smelled faintly of incense and old stone. Servants moved quickly but silently, their eyes avoiding the hero as he passed. He had been invited by the vampire queen herself, but he did not know why. His heart beat faster with each step. Humans rarely entered a vampire palace, and even rarer were they treated with respect. As he stepped into the central hall, he could hear soft whispers behind tall marble pillars. The hall was huge, with red velvet carpets stretching across the cold floor. Chandeliers hung high above, glowing with a faint, eerie light. Portraits of long-dead vampire kings and queens stared down from the walls. Then, suddenly, the sound of soft footsteps echoed through the hall. The hero turned, expecting a guard or servant, but no one appeared. His eyes widened as he saw a figure running straight toward him, a young girl, her hair shining like silver in the pale light. It was the vampire queen's daughter. Before anyone could react, she ran and wrapped her arms around the hero. The hall fell completely silent. Every noble, every guard froze in shock. The sound of a dropped goblet echoed, then stopped. Eyes widened, jaws dropped, and even the great vampire queen, seated on her throne, paused mid-sentence. The hero froze too, unsure of what to do. His mind raced. Why would the vampire queen's daughter hug him? Was this a test? A trap? He could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. Some looked angry, some looked curious, and some, strangely, seemed impressed. The young vampire girl pulled back slightly, her eyes meeting the hero's. She whispered softly, "I've been waiting for you." Her voice was gentle, almost human, yet it carried a strange power that made the hero's chest tighten. No one else heard her words, but the hall felt colder, heavier, as if time had stopped for a single moment. Whispers started again among the nobles. "How dare she touch a human?" one hissed. "She knows the punishment for this," another said. The hero felt a chill run down his spine. Punishments in the vampire world were not mild. But instead of fear, he felt calm. He stood tall and met the eyes of the vampire queen. There was no hesitation in his gaze, no trembling hands. The hero's courage was unusual for a human, and it was noticed. The queen's lips curved slightly, a hint of a smile. She tilted her head, as if she was studying him. The girl let go of him slowly. "Follow me," she whispered again. She turned and ran down a long corridor. The hero followed, his steps careful but steady. Guards watched silently, unsure whether to stop him or let him go. The tension in the palace was electric. As he followed the daughter through the twisting halls, the hero noticed small details. The shadows of carved gargoyles on the walls, the faint glimmer of enchanted jewels embedded in the floor, and the cold, silent presence of vampires who watched silently from the darkness. Every step made his heart beat faster, but he did not falter. Finally, they reached a door at the end of the hall. She stopped and looked at him. "Inside," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You must know, the palace is not safe tonight. There are eyes everywhere, and danger hides in every corner." The hero swallowed hard but nodded. He stepped forward, ready to face whatever awaited him. He did not know why the vampire queen's daughter had hugged him, or why she trusted him. But one thing was clear: nothing in this palace would ever be the same again. And with that, the door creaked open, leading into darkness. A chill ran down the hero's spine. The entire palace had frozen for a single moment, and he was now at the center of a mystery that could change everything. The hero stepped into the dimly lit chamber behind the heavy door. The air smelled faintly of old parchment and candle smoke. Shadows danced across the walls as the vampire queen's daughter moved gracefully, her silver hair catching the faint glow of a single hanging lantern. She paused, glancing back at him with a look that mixed fear and urgency. "You must understand," she whispered, "not everything here is as it seems. The palace, it hides many secrets, and tonight, one of them moves against us." The hero's brow furrowed. He had expected the palace to be full of strange rules and cold stares, but he had not expected a warning of danger from a princess herself. "Who is moving against you?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. She hesitated, biting her lip, then said, "A traitor walks among us. Someone close to the queen, someone who knows her every move. Tonight, they plan to overthrow her." The hero's mind raced. Humans rarely dealt with vampires' politics, yet here he was in the heart of a centuries-old monarchy, facing a threat he could barely understand. Still, he could think logically. "Then we need a plan," he said. "We can't stop them if we wait for them to act first." Her eyes widened slightly. "Most humans would never dare speak like that in a palace of vampires," she said softly. "They would cower, beg, or flee. But you," she shook her head, a small smile forming. "You are different." The hero looked at her, studying her face. There was intelligence there, yes, but also fear. As they prepared to return to the main hall, a sudden noise echoed, a soft, deliberate step behind them. They froze. The daughter's eyes widened. The hero turned slowly, his hand instinctively reaching for an invisible weapon. A shadow flitted across the wall, disappearing before they could see it clearly. The palace was alive with secrets, and the traitor had already noticed them. The hero swallowed hard. "They know we are here," he whispered. The daughter nodded. "And that is only the beginning." Night had fully fallen over the vampire palace, and the moon hung high, pale and cold. The hero moved silently beside the vampire queen's daughter through the palace gardens. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming flowers, their silver petals glinting in the moonlight. The palace itself loomed behind them, dark and silent, as though holding its breath. "This garden is forbidden at night," the daughter whispered. "Even some of the guards never enter after dusk. But it is the only place we can talk freely." The hero nodded. "Then we must be careful. One wrong step, one careless word, and we could be discovered." She paused, her eyes scanning the shadows. "You do not seem afraid," she said softly. "Most humans would have fled long ago." "I have to trust you," he replied. "And I have to trust myself. Fear will not help us." For a moment, they walked in silence, the only sound the soft rustle of leaves and distant hooves of patrols. Then the daughter stopped near a marble fountain, its water shimmering silver in the moonlight. "This is where we begin," she said. "The traitor is skilled in shadow magic. They can move unseen, manipulate the guards, even influence the queen's advisors. We must be clever, not strong." The hero studied her carefully. "Then we need traps, alarms, anything that can warn the queen without alerting the traitor." Her lips curved slightly in admiration. "You think like a human strategist," she said. "That may be the advantage we need. Centuries of power can make vampires predictable." The hero smiled faintly. "Predictable, until someone breaks their rules." Together, they devised a plan. The daughter explained secret passageways that twisted beneath the palace, places even some vampires had forgotten. They discussed alarm signals using subtle magic, shadows that moved unnaturally if someone passed, whispers in empty halls that could alert them silently. Every detail had to be precise. One mistake, and the traitor would know. Hours passed as they worked in secrecy. The hero moved carefully, placing small markers and indicators along corridors. The daughter watched him, her eyes full of cautious admiration. "I have never trusted a human like this before," she admitted. "Most are weak, fearful, or foolish. You are different." The hero shrugged. "I just know that planning beats panic, and courage beats fear. Sometimes humans survive because they notice what others ignore." Her gaze softened, but there was still a shadow of fear. "If we fail, it will not just be the palace that suffers," she whispered. "It will be my mother, and perhaps everyone who lives in these halls." The hero nodded solemnly. "Then we will not fail." Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the garden. The leaves trembled, and the fountain rippled violently, though no one had touched the water. The daughter's eyes widened. "Someone is here," she said, her voice barely audible. The traitor knows we are moving. The hero's heart raced, but he forced himself to remain calm. Then we act now. Silence is no longer safe. They moved quickly through the hidden paths, their footsteps light and careful. Shadows seemed to reach for them, and whispers echoed through the dark corridors. Every step was a test of their courage and trust. The palace was alive with danger, and the hero realized that one misstep could be fatal. As they reached a small balcony overlooking the main hall, they paused. Below, the traitor's figure moved with unnatural grace among the guards, unnoticed by anyone but the two of them. The hero felt a surge of determination. "We have the advantage," he whispered. "They may be strong, but we are clever, and they cannot see everything." The daughter nodded, gripping his arm lightly. "Then we fight, not with power, but with minds," she said. A sudden noise startled them, a shadow shifting unnaturally near a window. They froze. The traitor had spotted them, perhaps partially, but not fully. The tension was unbearable. Every heartbeat felt like thunder. The hero swallowed, his mind racing. "We are ready," he said. "No matter what happens, we move together." The daughter nodded, her silver eyes shining with determination. "Together," she whispered. The night had grown darker, and an eerie silence had settled over the vampire palace. But it was only the calm before the storm. Shadows flickered along the high walls, and distant footsteps echoed, soft but deliberate. The hero and the vampire queen's daughter had barely returned to the main hall when the first alarm rang silently through the hidden signals they had set. "It's begun," the daughter whispered, her eyes sharp and alert. "The traitor has made their move." The hero's heart pounded, but his mind stayed clear. He had anticipated this moment. "Stay close," he said. "Follow my lead. Panic will only help them." Suddenly, the palace erupted in chaos. Guards shouted, some running blindly through corridors. Portraits of old kings and queens seemed to frown as torches flickered violently. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, and ghostly whispers filled the air. The traitor had unleashed shadow magic, bending the environment, turning allies against each other. The hero moved quickly, guiding a small group of loyal vampire guards who had not been ensnared by the magic. "Form a circle," he shouted, his voice cutting through the confusion. "Cover each exit and watch each other's backs." The daughter fought beside him, her movements swift and precise. She struck with supernatural speed, her silver hair a blur as she protected him from attacks that seemed impossible to dodge. The hero marveled at her skill, but he knew that skill alone would not be enough. They needed strategy. Using his human ingenuity, the hero led the guard through a series of narrow corridors and hidden passageways he had memorized. He placed subtle traps and markers, forcing the traitor into blind alleys. Every move was calculated, every decision a test of courage and cleverness. Despite the chaos, the traitor seemed to anticipate their every step. Shadowy figures appeared and vanished in the blink of an eye, forcing the hero to think faster, act faster. He noticed patterns in the attacks, gaps in the enemy's timing, and exploited them. "Here," he whispered to the daughter, pointing toward a small chamber. "We can corner them if we lure them here. Their shadow magic will be weaker in confined spaces." She nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "Lead the way. I trust you." Together, they drew the traitor into the chamber. The shadows hesitated, unable to move as freely. The hero had prepared small reflective crystals along the walls that redirected the magic's energy harmlessly into the floor. The traitor hissed in frustration, realizing too late that the humans' planning had outsmarted centuries of power. The daughter struck with precision, trapping the traitor's shadow with a magical seal. The room froze in tension. The hero stepped forward, his eyes meeting the traitor's. "It ends tonight," he said, calm and steady. But just as they thought victory was near, the traitor's voice echoed, cold and venomous. "You cannot save her or your precious palace." A wave of dark energy surged through the room, and a wall of shadow erupted, throwing the hero and daughter to the ground. The daughter gasped but recovered quickly, helping the hero to his feet. "They're stronger than we thought," she said. and they know your human tricks. The hero's jaw tightened. Then we adapt. That's what humans do. They survive by thinking, by changing faster than their enemies. We'll beat them yet. As the first light of dawn began to touch the highest towers, the palace was still in chaos. Guards were regrouping, corridors were littered with signs of battle, and the traitor had vanished once more, leaving a cryptic warning. This is only the beginning. The hero looked at the daughter, his eyes serious but unwavering. We have stopped them for now, he said. But the threat isn't gone. Not yet. She nodded, gripping his arm. Then we prepare. Tonight we fight. Tomorrow, we finish this. The palace may have survived the first strike, but the air was thick with tension. Every shadow could hide a spy. Every whisper could be a trap. The hero understood one truth clearly. Courage and strategy would be their only weapons against centuries-old darkness. The hero stood at the base of the grand throne room, his eyes scanning the dark hall. Moonlight spilled through the tall stained glass windows, painting the floor in red and silver. The palace was quiet now, but the tension was electric. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper a warning. The traitor was here somewhere, and the vampire queen herself sat motionless on her throne, eyes fixed on the hero with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The vampire queen's daughter stepped beside him, her silver hair glowing faintly in the moonlight. "This is it," she whispered. "The traitor waits. One wrong move, and everything ends. Are you ready?" The hero swallowed, but nodded. "I have to be. Not for me, but for everyone in this palace." The doors at the far end of the hall creaked open, and the traitor entered. Shadow magic swirled around them, making the air shimmer and distort. Their voice echoed coldly. "So, the human believes he can play with powers far beyond him. How amusing." The hero took a step forward. "It's not about power. It's about thinking. You rely on fear and darkness. I rely on strategy and courage. That is the difference." The traitor laughed, and shadows leapt from the walls, twisting into dangerous forms. The vampire queen's daughter moved swiftly, deflecting the attacks with her silver-tipped blade. The hero dodged and observed, noticing a small flaw in the magic. The shadows moved predictably when they focused on one target at a time. He whispered to the daughter, "We separate them. Draw their attention to me, and then corner them in the left wing." She nodded subtly, moving forward. The hero stepped into the shadows deliberately, forcing the traitor to focus their magic on him. As predicted, the shadows lunged and swirled around him, but he led them carefully toward the corridor he had chosen. At the right moment, the daughter activated a reflective crystal, sending a beam of moonlight into the heart of the shadows. The energy rebounded, weakening the magic and giving them chance. The hero lunged forward, using his human speed and agility to strike a small talisman on the floor, the source of the traitor's power. A sharp crack echoed, and the shadows froze, shivering violently before dissolving into the air. The traitor screamed, their voice echoing in rage and disbelief. "Impossible! A human outsmarted me." The daughter stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "It's not impossible. It's human." The hero glanced at her. "We did it together." But the danger wasn't entirely gone. The traitor tried one last desperate attack, rushing forward with concentrated shadow energy. The hero intercepted, using a piece of enchanted metal from the palace walls to redirect the blast harmlessly into the floor. The traitor collapsed, defeated, and the shadows vanished completely. The vampire queen rose from her throne, her expression unreadable. She looked at the hero, then at her daughter, and finally gave a slow nod. "You have saved this palace," she said. Her voice was deep, commanding, yet surprisingly calm. "Human, you have shown courage, intelligence, and loyalty. I respect that." The daughter ran forward and hugged the hero, this time with pride and relief rather than urgency. The entire hall seemed to breathe again, the tension lifting like mist in the morning sun. Guards, nobles, and even minor spirits in the palace watched silently, witnessing an unprecedented moment. A human and a vampire princess, side by side, victorious. The hero looked at the queen. Your palace is safe, but there may be other threats beyond these walls. The daughter nodded, holding his hand tightly. Then we will face them together. As the first light of dawn touched the highest towers, the palace stood tall and silent, but the memory of the night's chaos lingered. The hero realized that courage, trust, and cleverness had been stronger than magic itself. Even in a world of vampires and shadows, humans could make a difference. The vampire queen's daughter whispered, almost to herself, "The palace may be safe for now, but the world outside still waits." The hero smiled faintly. "Then we prepare. Together.